Welcome back, everybody, to Dungeon Brew. John and I are continuing our series and talking about Thieves Guild. Today we're going to be talking about the Master Fencer. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Dungeon Brew.
Welcome back, everyone, to Dungeon Brew. John and I have been talking about building a Thieves Guild, and most recently we've been looking at the different masters within that Thieves Guild and the types of jobs that you may have associated with those masters. Today we're going to be talking about the Master Fencer, who is primarily in charge of smuggling jobs.
Yeah.
John, why don't you get us started?
So Master Fencer, we'll also talk a little bit about Master of Thralls, but for all intents and purposes, both of these things are going to fall into the same thing. Master Fencer is smuggling, Master of Thralls, it would be if the guild deals with slavery in some way. We didn't really feel like it was necessary to cover the Thralls one specifically, because a lot of these things are going to be applicable across both of these, where you're talking about dealing with an illegal transportation type situation or the selling of something that is not legal. So for smuggling and slavery, this is just kind of the general gist for both of those things. So both of these masters have a tendency to basically deal with those types of goods, we'll call it, and when they're handling an illegal good of some kind, it really depends on the location. So this doesn't always have to be something like they're dealing with drugs or whatever. This depends on the location that the guild is set in. So this could be magic items of any kind, because there are some locations, depending on your setting, where just having magic items would be considered an illegal good, or it may be required that magical items are registered with the city. So if you want to have a magical item of some kind and you want to make sure that the city is not, or the government is not aware that you own it, then you would go to a fencer or a fence in order to be able to get those goods from them. The Master Fencer then would be in charge of handing out these types of jobs to their guild members to either go help with the transportation of goods, the acquisition of goods, or even the selling or buying of goods, depending on the situation.
Yeah, one of the things that I like to also include in looking at these jobs is this individual is going to have a pretty good understanding of economics just in general.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to understand that supply and demand and what their costs are going to be and whether or not it's worth them trying to smuggle in whatever the item is. I mean, my mind automatically goes to things like prohibition. You know, they got to get that fire water into the city because they're not allowing people to have it because there's been so many instances types of things. And so they're looking at, where do I acquire this from? What is the cost going to be? If I'm going to be paying you X amount of money and I'm selling this, is it really worth my time period? And I'm not saying that as a GM, you need to be extremely aware of the economics, but just knowing that your fencer might be using some of his rhetoric or some of his influence in talking to the players to get them to do something, or even his negotiation based around supply and demand or economical statutes that he understands to kind of sway players to take certain actions or do certain things to bring in profit for the guild.
Yeah, and I want to point out, too, that because the Master Fence is good at doing these types of things, he's also going to be working closely with the Master Purser, which we'll talk about in another video. The Master Purser is in charge of the treasury, and then the Master of Veils, which we'll be talking about in the next video, who is in charge mostly of like laundering money in one way, shape, or form. So the Master Fence, or the Master Fencer, is very good at communication with these other masters within the guild, because he needs to make sure that all of the money that he is spending to acquire goods is then being spent, or he's basically recouping that based off of the supply and demand within the city or within other locations. So he might be doing something along the lines of purchasing goods from a neighboring nation with the intent of selling it on to another nation, or selling it within the city, or selling it anywhere else. In the same way that a normal trader would do this, he's just doing it with illegal goods.
And I would say that even though your party may be wanting to have like monetary reward for doing these types of things, like, you know, going and acquiring the goods or distributing the goods, you have to remember that this Master Fencer is looking for the biggest return on his investment as possible. So many of the rewards that he may be I guess, distributing out to your party may come back to those entitlements and special guild things that could be applied to them, more so than monetary gain. Or, maybe you get to pick one item out of the goods that you're smuggling or something along those lines. It's not necessarily always going to be a monetary reward, because he is looking for the greatest return on his investment as possible in order to be in good favor with the guild.
Or in particular, maybe he's providing goods to the members who are doing work for him that are ones that he can't sell. So
yeah, absolutely.
It's like, hey, you guys did a really good job. You can have, this magic item that is just something he's had for a year and a half and can't get rid of. So it's like, yeah, it seems like it's pretty valuable. It seems like it's pretty nice, but it just couldn't sell it. So I'm going to go ahead and give that to the guild member who did really well and make them feel special, while all at the same time getting rid of something that you couldn't offload to somebody else anyway. So, definitely a lot of that going on. All right, so now that we kind of have an understanding of the role of the Master Fencer and the role of someone who is going to be smuggling goods within the guild, let's talk a little bit about what those jobs are going to look like for members who are coming in on this. So we've talked about this with the Master Enforcer and the Master Assassin, that when it comes to these types of jobs, when it comes to any job within the guild, we want those jobs to be a little bit more intricate and exciting than simply go here, buy this, and come back. There should always be something more to it. And with the Master Fencer, this is an excellent opportunity if you're talking about an adventuring party as a whole, because you can send them to other locations and have them return and make this feel like a more involved quest, where you can work in other quests into the larger quest. So we're going to send you across to this other area. We need to purchase this cache of cursed items and bring them back to the city. That is the quest that you're doing for the guild, but in the meantime, as the GM, you can go in and work in additional quests to make sure that it's a little bit more, there's more to it than simply that one quest when you're talking about something that may take a week or more of in-game time.
Overwhelm them with so many quests that they forget about the cache, and then they come back and have to deal with guild consequences.
Yeah. It also can include things like researching other, so trying to find the goods or find the person or do something else like that. So it doesn't always have to be, these quests don't always have to be as straightforward as go here, buy this, come back, because that's a relatively boring quest. There's not a whole lot going on there. You can include things like, we're going to try and steal whatever it is from the neighboring cities so that we can smuggle it back in here. We are talking about a trader who is particularly flighty, who is from a neighboring nation that we're currently at war with, and we want to go purchase goods from this trader that are normally illegal in our home country, and we just need to make sure we're putting him at ease. You turn it into a social quest where it's like, hey buddy, it's not a big deal, no one's going to come, we're just going to do I'm going to give you some money, you're going to give me some goods. But you can turn those into social quests. You can make them engaging for party members who aren't necessarily thieves by doing things like that. Or it can be something where it's like, the other people were trying to take advantage of you as you were coming to do this trade deal, and you turned it into a combat encounter instead. There's a number of different ways you can take these quests to make them more than just, I'm going to, going to the store to buy yourself some eggs. It doesn't have to be that. It can be a lot more than that.
And I was going to say, this is really a good option to have your social and your exploration quests really be kind of pushed out. And it's good. I like the idea of some of these things turning into a combat, but they shouldn't all turn into a combat situation. You should give an opportunity for some of your more socially aligned classes to be able to broker better deals, to go and make connections, to kind of be their own string network. And this works really well for your adventurers that are out and about doing things, where the fencer says, hey, I know you're heading into the east. We don't have a lot of connections out there. We have a lofty trade here of magical items we need to get rid of. While you're out there, try to broker a deal so we can smuggle our items or our goods that we have here into their territories and make some additional profit by getting it out in that way. And it allows your adventuring party to go out and perform their regular adventures while also seeking out opportunities for the guild.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really good option, is to capitalize on multiple jobs at the same time. So, like I said, we're going to the east, right? Maybe you're really going there for an assassination job, or you're going there for something to do for the spy master, where you're acquiring information from that region. Any number of reasons that you're actually going out to the east, and then the master fencer comes over at the same time and says, "Hey, listen, while you're there, here's some other jobs you can do for this, and there'll be an extra payment if you manage to accomplish these things while you're out there," which also allows for multiple jobs to be undertaken at the same time, multiple quests, and gives the party multiple things to do, which allows you to capitalize on things like the exploration aspect. So not only is it a social quest, because you have to go out there and broker the deal, but it's also an exploration. You have to find somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
Like you have to go in there and investigate the area, figure out, who's the person that you really want to deal with out in that region. And from the GM perspective, you can have some fun with this, because you can put in a bunch of false positives basically in the area. You find Bob down on the corner, and he seems like the guy you want to smuggle with. He's a fence for that region, but in reality, he flies solo. He's not affiliated with a guild, and if you actually deal with him and you don't succeed on your social, insight rolls and things like that, you're going to end up offending another guild in the region, because you're trying to deal with somebody who is not associated with the guild in the region. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think one of the things that you and I like to really incorporate from time to time is skill check kind of like scenarios, and this allows you to set up those skill check scenarios with your players. And the other thing that I always think about when it comes to the Master Fencer is we always think about smuggling items in, but it can also be smuggling items out. So if you're running a pirate campaign, it may be that you're getting your goods onto a boat, you're smuggling them out of the city to go sell them, and it takes a number of skill checks, to hide the goods, to have them in your sealed cargo in a different area, to pass inspection checks, to be able to sail the ship, and then maybe there's other pirates in the region that are coming and trying to steal your goods as well that you have to fend off. There's a whole number of things that you can do with this particular fencer to make really engaging quests overall.
Yeah, and I think the selling aspect of it is important too. I think sometimes it's easy to get locked in on one side of that transaction and go, we're buying stuff. Well, you can sell stuff too. You can sell stuff out and about, but you can also sell things locally. So if you're just talking about a small quest within the city, it's like, okay, you go down to the corner and try and offload as much of whatever product it is as possible. Or we have these smuggled silks, and we want to go and try and sell these to some of the nobility in the area, so that because they're in high demand among this upper class, but they can't be seen buying them. So you need to find your way into getting their ear to sell these silks to somebody with picking the right buyer, while also offloading the goods at a price that's profitable to us. So there's this intricate weave of, let's go do this thing, that we don't necessarily have a specific buyer in mind. We need to go find them, which is exploration and social as well.
So we've talked quite a bit about acquiring. We've talked quite a bit about selling. I also just want to put a pin in making sure that there's also quests that can be done for keeping the goods, for storing the goods in some way. Maybe there's a warehouse in the area that's got to pass inspection checks. It needs to have the right security built up around it. Maybe you have a specific flour that you've picked up out of the north that if it reaches a certain temperature of heat in the south, it will implode and blow up your entire workshop. And so you have to go and get things in order to keep the temperature in that area cooled down, to keep these good enough until you can off them and get them off to buyers. So you can have all sorts of little fun things there as well to keep and store the goods without them being picked up by authorities.
Yeah, and I want to point out that with this and with many other quests, it's important to set up failure as not all or nothing, but failure by degrees. So when it comes to things like inspections, you have a guard come through, and you made your roll in order to try and hide the goods from a player perspective. The player made the roll to hide the goods. They failed the roll. So they were found by the guard. Well, so now they should be given the opportunity to potentially bribe the guard. And then if they fail in bribing the guard, maybe they're making an attempt to I don't know, deceive the guard, so which maybe would occur first. So we're going to deceive them. This isn't what it looks like. This is something else. I didn't know it was there. We purchased this. Didn't realize that this was coming with it. I don't know what this is. Please, free. We'll get rid of it. Don't worry about it. Oh, you figured out what it is. I'm going to go ahead and try and bribe you. Oh, the bribe isn't enough. Maybe I should bribe some more. Oh no, you're aware of this, so I'm going to attempt to threaten the guard or dispatch the guard in some way before he has a chance to report to his superiors. Give that opportunity for multiple failures before it's just like, oh, you're being arrested now because you failed this one check, because that's going to happen very often if that's the case.
Yeah, I honestly always think of that one scene, and this is a spoiler, out of Game of Thrones, when you have Bravos.
Might be a little bit late for that.
Yeah, but he's smuggling out 2 people off the island, and the guards show up, and he first he tries to lie to them. That doesn't work. So then he has them taste fish and lies to them about the fish and deceives them in that way. They start to go off. That doesn't work. Then they catch something else. He tries to bribe them with money. That doesn't work. And so then they eventually get into a fight. But he goes through several levels of bribing and deceiving and makes certain progress in each way before there's something that happens that brings the guard's attention back to the issue at hand. And so it's very much about going through those different levels and making it a real natural experience for the players.
Right. All right, I mean, that's basically it. Like I said, we're talking about Master Fence, Master of Thralls. Both of these are kind of equally applicable. It's just really the type of thing that you're smuggling more than anything else. But you just play with degrees of failure, play with both ends of the spectrum. You can do this locally, you can do this far away. These can be jobs that are tacked on to other jobs. There's a number of ways to approach these types of jobs within the guild to make them interesting and engaging for the players, and they don't have to be taking a trip to the grocery store in order to buy some milk. You can make smuggling jobs very exciting and very interesting, especially when it comes to how are they getting creative about smuggling goods in or out of a location and their hidden compartments and all that other stuff. I think a lot of players have fun doing that. I've had players before who get very creative and send me a detailed description of exactly how they keep all of their stolen or hidden merchandise out of the eyes of local guards when they happen to be passing through checkpoints and things like that.
All right, so I hope that you guys have enjoyed this video. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button, ding the little bell so you can get the update for our next video, and we will see you next time.
Dungeon Brew.